Some breaking news on the wrestling world this afternoon that majorly makes a change to AEW All In Wembley next weekend. So it's been reported that Daniel Cash Wheeler was arrested early on Friday morning by the Orlando Police Department. He was booked in circuit court. According to county records, the Orlando Sentinel has now ran a report on the arrest this morning, saying that Daniel Wheeler from AEW was arrested on Friday morning by the Orlando Police Department and charged with one count of aggravated assault with a firearm. He was booked in circuit court, and the timing of this couldn't be worse.
We are 9 days away from All In. It's not a great time for this to be happening to AEW. It's their biggest show ever, and this is not a good news story. According to the Orange County Inmate Database, Daniel Marshall Wheeler, aged 36, was pre-sentenced with a $2,500 bond by Orlando PD for, as Tom mentioned, aggravated assault with a firearm. AEW responded to Fightful's request for a statement on Cash Wheeler's arrest, and AEW said, AEW has been made aware of the charge and we are closely monitoring the situation. He is fully cooperating with local authorities. According to Tampa law, a conviction for aggravated assault with a firearm is punished as a third-degree felony, which this means that the defendant may be incarcerated for up to 5 years and be ordered to pay a fine of up to $5,000, which is a staggering sentence for someone in a public position such as his. It is quite a shock to hear about.
Now, we don't know that's what's been passed down yet. That is basically us quoting Tampa law for what something like this means. I think one thing it definitely means is that we won't be seeing Cash Wheeler in the UK next weekend. I think
we can say with a lot of certainty that it puts it in doubt for sure. You know, it's, as we said, 9 days away from one of their biggest shows of all time, potentially the biggest show of all time in a wrestling scene. I know, and he's going to be in one of the biggest matches, or is said to be in one of the biggest matches with the Young Bucks, and it's just horrible timing. But obviously, it seems like it's quite a serious situation.
Well, Dax Harwood, who's Cash's tag team partner, recently spoke to DAZN about this match with the Young Bucks. He said, I think it will be, or it has the potential to be, if these guys decide they want to do it, the biggest match of Cash and I's career. Before we even came to AEW, all you heard was FTR versus the Young Bucks. Or excuse me, the Revival versus the Young Bucks. What would happen if these two teams got together in the ring? They've had 2 matches so far, and this was one of the more hyped matches for the weekend, the rubber match between FTR and the Young Bucks. Those are comments from Dax Harwood a little while ago, obviously before the news of Daniel Wheeler's arrest. And without having to do more in the way of speculation, I guess it's a case of let's see what happens in terms of that match and Daniel Wheeler's status in AEW.
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see. I guess it's obviously a breaking story right now. I'm sure we will find out more, but it's worrying with a week to go. We might not see this rubber match, this dream match. But as we said, you know, the wrestling does come secondary to a situation as big as this and quite as serious as this.
For the latest on this story that, as Fraser says, is breaking, you can check out Cultaholic.com. Now, when it comes to All In, the Observer reporting that at press time we were 80,544 tickets sold, passing SummerSlam 92, passing Londos versus Cola in 1934, and I reckon by the end of this weekend it'll pass WrestleMania 32.
Which is staggering. You know, WrestleMania 32, of course, they hyped up as having 101,000 people in the attendance. Of course, that is a little bit of a fabrication. There was a roughly 80,000. Vince McMahon himself has admitted that includes everyone that sold tickets to the venue, everyone that was working behind the stalls in the venue. But it does look like All In is about to smash every single record for attendances, and it's an exciting time. You know, it's a big show. We discussed on the podcast this week, which, you know, going out tonight, we discussed, is it going to live up to the expectations? And is the show, are you whelmed by it? But I think 80,000 people in that building are going to enjoy it.
Podcast curse strikes again.
It does indeed.
One guy who's going to be competing at All In is Will Ospreay in a first-time ever match against Chris Jericho. The Observer have been going into the details as to why he's recently changed the IWGP US title to the IWGP UK title.
Indeed. Will Ospreay saying a few weeks ago, he was not happy with the US Championship, the look of the US Championship. He wanted a belt that represented him. The Observer saying Destruction and Kobe has Ospreay versus Sujay for the UK belt. Before the finals, Ospreay noted that he was changing the name of the US title to the UK title. The idea is to make him a super babyface for the UK by renaming the title. Obviously, Will Ospreay is competing next week, as you said, at All In against Chris Jericho, and I'm fully expecting him to get massive cheers from a UK crowd. But he's up against a face Chris Jericho, and people like singing Judas. And I think Fozzie's going to have the biggest concert they've ever sold. 80,000 people, record breaking, as we just recovered there, an audience to watch Fozzie perform. And I saw Will Ospreay posting the lyrics to Elevated.
I saw this.
You better learn them, because you're going to be so elevated to the sky. Whoa, oh, you're so elevated.
Look at you learning the lyrics.
Oh, it's stuck in my brain from the WCPW days.
I can imagine that Will Ospreay will probably bring that UK title to Royal Quest as well. That seems obvious. I think him front and center at Crystal Palace.
It's a good way to the copper box. Yeah, the copper box. It's a good way to rename the title. Obviously, New Japan has got strong in the US. It feels a little bit odd that they would have a US championship as well when you've got Strong as your US brand. That should be the main title on that card. The UK, they come over to the UK quite regularly. We've got Royal Quest, they've got the deal with Rev Pro. It makes sense to have it changed to the UK title. And Ospreay is probably the best representative of British wrestling right now. He's the top guy. Absolutely.
From one sense of national heritage to another, Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza recently having some disagreements on NXT, but this is part of a grander plan, isn't it, Fraser?
Yeah, apparently, according to the Wrestling Observer, their long-term main roster plans is for them to come back up to the main roster as a babyface team. Obviously, they've been down in NXT, as Tom said there, for a wee bit. There was a little bit of a... It seems everyone's got tension at the moment. Judgment Day, the Bloodline, you've got... everyone is butting heads, and they seem to have been butting heads recently. Looks like that's not going to be the case going forward. The idea is to use their grandfather to establish them as authentic Mexican baby faces, with the idea that their grandfather was a superstar. So it's going to be interesting to see how they go and how they get treated on the main roster. Do you think they've got a lot of potential?
Well, it's one of those where they want to sort of use their grandfather as hey, he was the guy that we learned from. Yeah. But Angel Garza's dad is Hector Garza.
Yeah.
Who is a massive name in his own right. So maybe one would hope they lean into both in some way, shape or form, rather than just missing a generation.
Well, you say that, but then on NXT this week, when they had a little video package, and again, we discuss it on the podcast, which you can check out later at 8 o'clock tonight, where they had a little video package where they're both lying in different beds that look like the same bed, where they both got a photo of their grandfather next to the bed, and it's the exact same photo. It looks like they are just skipping an entire historic, prestigious generation and going... Yeah, but their grandfather's mint, isn't he?
Yeah, they are two to keep an eye on NXT. Our top story once again this afternoon, Daniel Cash Wheeler, AEW star, one half of the AEW Tag Team Champions, has been arrested and will face a count of aggravated assault in Orange County. We'll have more details on this breaking story as we get it at cultaholic.com.